in the woodshed with night danger. You can't see it, but you are, as a camera, currently perched upon a stack of wood that I will use to heat my house this winter. I'm sitting upon trusty log splitter. I'm feeling very rustic today, very folksy. And I want to talk a bit about a wonderful gaming experience that I had that expanded my horizons in the conception of the mystery game. Brian Renninger, aka Fluid the Druid, wanted to run Gangbusters, the TSR. I certainly hope those cicadas aren't too loud. I can't make them stop, and I won't film indoors. Brian Renninger wanted to run Gangbusters, the TSR era gangster game about Prohibition, Al Capone types, and private eyes. And he ran it as a Bronstein, each of us submitted a week's worth of orders, and then on a day-by-day basis he gave us a chance to react to new information. There was multiple Discord channels which functioned as rooms in a house if you were to run this in person, where we could discuss individually. I could say, hey, I want to talk to you for a minute. We could step into another room and engage in a private conversation. And it was incredible. It was a remarkable gaming experience, and it opened my eyes to some stuff that I think deserves, for posterity's sake, discussion in the woodshed. So, each player, they sort of controlled a character, but they also sort of controlled a faction. I was the chief of police, but I was also the police as a broad faction. In many ways, someone might play a mob boss, but they were also an individual mob person while also being a mob writ large. And something I think I mentioned in a previous video, if I didn't, I intended to, was the problem that if you used the Bronstein structure and the faction play structure to simply generate crime to be investigated, this produced a problem where players who were controlling a faction, when they went to play an individual player character at the session level, they have to pretend that they don't know who did it. Which is to say, you can run a cops game and then hand over control of all the criminal factions to players, and they submit orders in an ongoing campaign. But the problem is that it means that individual players, if their faction knows who did the crime or how the crime was committed, then the investigation isn't very fun for them, because they have to pretend that they don't know. Consider, however, the possibility that instead the players who control criminals never investigate. The concept that Jeffro has been exploring, the total non-stop Bronstein, where players are all at an individual single-figure player character level, submitting orders and acting at cross interests at all times. Suppose that this was the norm. And this actually solves two problems at the same time. If I was to, for a crime, gangster, cop, detective, noir game, if I was to implement this, it solves two problems at once. Firstly, it solves the problem of players knowing things about the investigation that their characters wouldn't have access to. Because if you're not playing a cop, then you're not investigating. You're committing crimes. When you submit your orders to me, it's not about solving crimes, it's about causing them. And you never actually cross over and switch gears into player character mode to solve the crimes, you stay in the mindset of committing crimes 100% of the game. The entire time that gameplay is happening, you are a criminal. And this means you never have meta knowledge of an investigation that you are trying to solve because you're never investigating. And this solves another problem that has come up as I approach and develop my thoughts concerning an investigation game, which is that some players don't like investigating. I run for the same group of guys I always have, and one of my players is my brother. My brother does not like investigation games. When I ran Call of Cthulhu, he just bowed out and didn't show up for a while. He, as he put it, doesn't have the bandwidth mentally to try and solve crimes, to solve mysteries. And he wants to show up and do almost literally anything else when he shows up to play an RPG. If I was to simply give him control of a criminal faction, A, the chance that he would get to engage in combat, which he likes, is higher. B, he would never be expected to piece together the individual elements of a mystery, because he's not the one who's solving it. Someone sitting across the table from him who's playing a cop is supposed to solve the crimes. He's supposed to commit them. And this asymmetric structure, where you have a table full of players who are all playing individual characters, and none of them are playing in an explicit party structure. In the Gangbusters Bronstein, I worked a lot with the FBI, and I also worked a lot with the Irish mob, because I, as an Irish policeman, I was in the pocket of the Irish mob. And so I worked with other players a great deal. But I never was in a party with other players. At all times, I had to wonder if the people I was working with were lying to me. And what's really interesting is that this also takes a mystery investigation load off of the adventurers. Not the adventurers. Sorry, I'm getting notifications on my phone. It's throwing my focus off. It takes a load off of the game master. It's not the game master's job to play the NPCs and try and conceal and at the same time trickle out information to the investigator, because another player is going to do that for him. Another player. I spent almost the entire Bronstein in various chat rooms aggressively grilling people for information. What do you know about this missing girl? When did you see her last? What do you know about these fixed fights? I hear talk that there might be contraband being moved across the lake. What do you know about that? And instead of the GM having to consult a mountain of notes and dig through all the data that he has prepped, I simply had to talk to other players who had their own agendas and their own ideas and their own intentions and hope that they were telling me the truth. And sometimes all I could do is wait. Wait for the next turn. Wait for a new game state to emerge. Wait for one of the people I interrogated to incriminate themselves with their own actions. It was massively satisfying as a player who likes investigation to grill all these criminals and demand answers. And at the same time, while I was playing an investigation game, someone else was playing a completely different type of game. They were playing a I want to get away with murder game. I want to get away with arson game. I want to conceal my bootleg operation. This is a total paradigm shift. If I want to play an investigation game, I simply create a character who is a cop. And if I don't want to play an investigation game, I create a character who is not a cop and who is causing problems for the cops. The total non-stop Bronstein, the how do I put this? In the Gangbusters introduction, it describes sitting around the table and that all the players are basically working against each other. In the example of play, it has a character rob a hardware store, and then the GM looks over to the cop who's supposed to investigate the robbing of the hardware store. This is not an adventuring party. This is not a group of plucky ragtag individuals all working together towards a common goal. This is all fleshed out, distinct characters with their own goals, and they work towards those goals. And if someone else wants to help them, then they help them. And if someone else wants to harm them, maybe they bump them off. PvP, but also PvE, is assumed. I was amazed. It was an incredible session. It was a... And I'm not just saying that because everyone seems to think I won. I'm not so sure that I won. I was very unhappy with a lot of things that happened towards the end of the game. But to abandon the railroad in an investigation game, the way that I've described in previous videos, to abandon the foregone or the intended solution or conclusion, to abandon the mindset of leading the players through a set of scenarios until they reach the climax. Maybe the answer is that not all the players are investigators. And I think this could apply to a Call of Cthulhu game. When I ran Call of Cthulhu, as I mentioned, my brother bowed out. But suppose I simply never asked him to play an investigator. Suppose I asked him to play one of the cults, play a leader of one of the cults, and I'm going to need to experiment with this. Unlike much of the Bro SR, I don't play online very much. I basically exclusively play once a week in real life with the same group of guys that I've always gamed with. And I wonder if I can take the structure from the Bronstein and apply it to a normal weekly session. A normal, regular operation. Operation's probably the wrong word. I'm a little tired. My daughter had nightmares all night last night. I slept very little. Anyhow, Jeffro's been running Traveler. It's a skill-based system, and that means that people's backgrounds and characters aren't guaranteed to all be synergized, and that means that they can act against each other's interests. My players have voted, and the next thing they want to do as a gaming group is Warhammer. Warhammer is a game where you might wind up with a beggar, a night watchman, a bounty hunter, a witch hunter, and a demonologist, all sitting at the table together. And instead of inventing some contrived reason for why they have to adventure together and work together towards some common goal, what if I took a note from the Total Nonstop Bronstein and I simply asked each player what they wanted to do towards their own goals? What if I let them submit orders and act contrary to each other's interests? What if I encouraged PvP and, as the GM, simply introduce the occasional problem that is bigger than any of them, forcing them to cooperate on some things while not cooperating on others? We shall see how this plays out. I have a very busy month ahead of me. I probably won't start a new campaign or a new anything, really, until mid-September at the earliest, maybe October. But I think I know the direction I want to take it, and I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to see how this would play out from the perspective of players, because so often I'm the GM. This is Midnight Danger in the Woodshed. and I'll see you all later.